It's no accident that sounds like you're leveling up in a video game. 48% of 18 to 29-year-olds have an online dating profile.
Make them work for it.
45% of people say they're more frustrated with this form of dating than hopeful.
There are so many people you can connect with.
Should I swipe right?
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong. Setting the record straight on dating apps. Everyday people telling everyday stories of the swipe right world with your host, Koss.
Well, I know he had a good time.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good night. Welcome. Anytime you want to listen to us, we're going to be there for you, whether you want to listen to us on YouTube, whether you want to, or watch us, listen to us on YouTube, check us out on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's places I don't even know where we're at because I see that we're getting listened to in like different countries, and I didn't even know we were on that platform that they're listening to. So anyway, I am that guy, as you know by now. If you listen to the show, I am that guy. I am Koss. I am the host of this podcast. Welcome to the number one podcast amongst animals with species identity crises going on. That's I don't know. That's what I'm going to go with today. Fun show. I think fun show for you this week. This might be show 100. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. Like last week, we did somewhat of a re-air. It was one of my favorite stories. It had a crazy, like just dude at the end. The girl that she talked about, the date with the dude at the end, is go back and listen to it, airing some dirty laundry. But we had the video of it, but we recorded it back when we weren't posting videos. So we wanted to post that to the YouTube channel so everyone could see the interaction, see what that was like. It's always a little bit more engaging. And so that's why if you listened to audio only, it may have sounded like a re-air. So this week, though, something new, something different. So like, follow, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Share it as much as possible for those of you that are. Totally appreciate it. The YouTube channel just keeps growing and growing and growing. The show keeps growing and growing and growing, but we see the biggest growth on YouTube. So if you are a podcaster or you're looking into it, please don't forget to drop as much as you can on YouTube, because it just seems like there's more and more stuff happening there. But if you want to tell your story, 317-426-6616. Call, text, let me know how to get in contact with you. I'll be happy to. I want to hear everybody's story. The rule is I want everybody's story. Everybody's got something to share, because everybody can, there's somebody out there or a bunch of somebodies out there who are going to identify with your story and be like, I'm going through the same thing that happened to me. And they're going to hear how you worked through it, or you're going to hear how they worked through it. And that's the whole premise. We're in all this together. Email us at swipewrongpod@gmail.com. The producer of the show is just amazing. Jay, he is the best. He makes this all if the little engine that could is not a good nickname, but the dude just makes it all happen and makes it sound beautiful, to be honest. So couldn't do the show without him, that's for sure. But this week I thought there's something that's been working around in my head a little bit. And now that I feel like I've talked to so many people and I've heard so many stories, and you hear this person's a coach and that person's a coach, I'm just a guy who's getting information from amazing people like yourself. And I think I've got an interesting, something interesting to say about it. And that's what this show's about. So sit back, relax, put your feet up, grab your popcorn, get it buttered, throw some caramel on there, some sea salt, popcorn, butter, whatever you want to do. If you're in traffic, please do me a favor. Don't hit that person next to you, in front of you, beside you, however. And share this episode, because it's going to be one of the more interesting ones, not from a dating story perspective, that you're going to listen to. And welcome to the dating cycle.
Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions or any entities they represent. This podcast is about dating experiences. It is not to say one dating app is better or worse than another.
You know, we only talk every day, but we've only talked on this show, I would say that's probably about what, the fifth or sixth time you've been on, you think? Somewhere in that
That's
area?
probably close to right. 5 or 6
Yeah.
times sounds good. If we're
And-
including the multi-visit conversations.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And the live streams and
Yeah.
cross.
I think I've done more threesomes than I've done solo shows.
Everyone's got to
I guess,
have a
hey.
goal.
Yeah.
Gotta have a goal. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like I've in the world that I've in my other world, I feel like I got 5 different worlds. I got the podcast world, we've got the sports betting world, we've got our other world of a 9 to 5 gig or whatever. And in one of these worlds, the term I hear a lot is debt cycle. I hear a lot about debt cycle. People, and it's crazy because people, have these credit cards, who doesn't, and they rack up the debt on the credit cards because inflation's crazy. And then it's the crazy thing is like, somebody will have a $20,000 credit limit on a card and they'll need to use it. They'll get up to about 10, 12,000. All of a sudden the credit card company goes, I'm going to raise this up to 25% on you. And you're just like, what the fuck? And I'm thinking, well, there's also a dating cycle. And I figured you and I should talk about this dating cycle thing because I feel like you're in like cycle number 3.
That's probably close to right.
Yeah.
Hey, no deposit, no withdrawal, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
but I think, once you deplete the account, you need to pause and refill before you start making more withdrawals. And I remember on one of the first shows that I did with you, I said the goal is to make connections and meet people and learn about myself, right? Through every interaction and every meeting or date or situationship or relationship, or however you want to phrase. I like to just call them friends. You meet people, you make connections, you make new friends, whether that stays platonic or it turns into a romance for a time or whatnot. But then every once in a while, when those things end, you start to go back into that curiosity of like, all right, well, should I do this again? Sometimes you just need to take a break and recharge the batteries and, review your notes, if you will. See what you learned about yourself or about, what you're looking for, what you're not looking for. And then you get back in the batter's box and batter up.
Like over the past, well, shit. I mean, now 100 episodes in. And so over the past 100 episodes, the things that I've learned, the things that I've gone through, I think that's such it's so big to where if you're kind of going through a bunch of dates and you're like, man, this just isn't working, or you run into your share of crazy or whatever, here's to the people who keep swinging. I mean, go ahead, keep taking your at bats. But like I truly have become the biggest believer of just stop for a minute, because usually there's something going on internally that's attracting whatever's happening externally. So you take the break, you take the time off the apps, you take your minutes and you're like, all right, cool. And you recalibrate yourself, like you're saying, and then you go back on there. But like this dating cycle, we talk about it often. Like this part that I'm about to come up, we talk about it just often when we're joking around. Remember when we were first on the apps, what it was like, and it was eyes wide open. It was like just it was more than a video game. It was VR headset playing the reality. Like I'm in there as much as I possibly can be, and oh, I got a connection. Here we go. And then it was just like so. It was fun and it was stimulating and crazy all at the same time.
Oh, I mean, it's sensory overload. 100%. Well, and we talk about the digital age and instant gratification, and it's all about the likes, and it's always about, feeding the machine. and you
Yeah.
can't get enough of it. It's so addicting. And then you get into the dating apps, and it's like you make a connection, and you make another connection, and you make it, and you're like, oh shit, I got like 4 or 5 different people I've connected with. How do I talk to one? And which
Yeah.
one do I talk to? And at what point do you, whittle it down from 5 to 4 to 3, or do you? How many of those conversations die out within a week, or they start hot and heavy, and then one or both of you don't put forth the same amount of energy because maybe you're investing more energy in another connection. Like it's as I sit and say it out loud, it's exhausting.
It's
I think
exhausting.
after that second or third cycle, if you will,
Yeah.
it's not quite as much fun. Like I had a conversation with a friend of ours just last week. We were catching up, and she had a situation that she was going through. And one of the things we were talking about was exactly that. Like, hey, like you don't really need any of this. And the last few experiences you've had have ended similarly, and you're jumping right into the next thing. Maybe do something different, and this is someone who was like very on purpose with every time they connected with someone, and it was going somewhere, and they were painting pictures, and now it sounds like we'll see the next time we get a chance to catch up, but she's just going to go and take as many swings as she can and meet a bunch of people and try to learn something.
I feel like she's breaking rule number one. Like I really do.
Probably.
Rule number one being she has expectations over experience.
100%.
I mean, like
100%.
when you
I don't want to speak on her behalf, but
yeah. That your belief is that,
Yeah.
right? Is that
There's a good chance she might hear this. Who knows?
Yeah, that's fair. Your belief is yeah, because once you put those expectations in there, I think, like, to me, the only place to go is down, and I don't mean in the fun way. Like
Yeah.
like if you have the experience that builds up to the hope of an expectation eventually, great. You're let down. I think that's the key to, I mean, if we're gonna say that's rule number one, that's our Fight Club rule number one or whatever. But that's such the key to it, because like it's a self-preservation piece, I think.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity or something like that. I'm paraphrasing,
Like
of course.
that. Yeah.
But if we're truly trying to learn and we're truly trying to grow, and to your point, like not setting expectations, but going in open-minded and hoping to learn, it can be more fun is probably the wrong phrase, but for me, it's more enjoyable when there's meaning behind it. That same person we were talking about, and I just recently got back on, and she was like, well, what are you going to do this time? And I laughed and I said, what I don't want to do is just go on a bunch of first dates. I don't want to do that. So can't
that's that
you can't continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Right. Well, so when you run into that too, though, so if we're talking about if there is truly a cycle, like I think that's the other thing too, is let's see like what's the definition of what this cycle looks like. I mean, it's almost like cycle number one, eyes wide open, sensory overload. That's all a part of cycle. That then you kind of come off of that a little bit. You go through a bunch of the dates, and you kind of start to figure out your way. Maybe you meet at the same place because you're comfortable, like Fox and the Hound. That's my spot. I want to go to Fox and the Hound,
right?
As opposed to
your routine.
Yeah,
creatures of habit.
Exactly. You start to find like, all right, this is cool. Like, are we doing coffee? Or we like, I used to always say, hey, you want, drinks, coffee or cocktails, you call it, whatever, something like that. So cycle number one, I would say is the eyes wide open. And then after, like, cycle two is more like, all right, falling into a rhythm, like falling into a comfortable space. Maybe that's the best way to put it, to where maybe you don't have 30 people you're talking to or 10 people, like you've cut that number maybe in half. And I don't know if you're on purpose as much, but you've definitely cut it to what you're like, hey, this is more of what I'm looking for. This person doesn't exhibit that, as opposed to I want to go out and just have as much of everything with everyone.
Definitely more selective
Yeah.
in that second round, for sure. For sure. And honestly, I think, at least for me in my experiences, every cycle has been more selective to where it's like I'm getting more and more in tune with what I'm interested in pursuing potentially and what I may have been interested in pursuing before, but now no, like now I'm just not going to entertain that because of whatever I've learned through these past cycles, right? Because to go back to the debt cycle thing, what you were talking about with credit cards and like $20,000, and all of a sudden you rack up half of that, and then it's like, oh, like there is something to like you getting to 10 and then taking that limit and paying it off before you starting again. And I think that's where we're learning and growing. It's like, all right, what did I do this time that got me to 10 grand so quickly? How do I improve those decision making skills for the next time to maybe it's only 6?
That's fair.
And then, all right, I got to hold myself accountable to this. I made it to 6. Now I got to get it back down to 0 before I make another one. All right, this time we got to 4, right? So, like, inevitably, the goal is to not be in debt. Or if we're spinning this to relationship focused goal, like being in a relationship or getting off the apps, you know?
Yeah. 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 I mean, it definitely turns itself into that's a good analogy. It's a good way of putting it, sticking with that cycle and dating cycle. It's so funny. So eyes wide open, sensory overload to comfortability and pattern, or routine and comfortability. Seems like that's what comes next. And if you're still kind of going through it, because even being comfortable doesn't mean you're going to find your happily ever after, or your you know you know handcuffed to the bed, whatever it is that you're looking for, doesn't mean you're going to find that one or those 6 people that you're looking to fill whatever void. It still means you're going to find some disconnect. I mean, hopefully by this phase you found it, but I mean, let's just say like you've been on the apps off and on for what, about 3 years now?
More or less, 2.5 or
Yeah.
3, close to
Two and a
that.
half
Yeah.
or 3 years. Okay. So, you go through that, then you take your time out. People take their time out. They stop, they whatever. Like I'm like, it's either I need to take a time out for me, or oh my God, there's too much crazy. I can't handle this. And then they come back on with, even like you were saying, a more selective, even more selective approach, to where, if you were talking to 10, you're at 20 at first, then 10, you still may talk to 10, but it's like your weeding out process of who you communicate with. Like, I think this is the phase where people realize I need my effort matched. Like, if I'm going to put out this much conversation, they need to put out this much conversation, or whatever. That's where I feel like that's like the bottom part of the cycle before we head home.
I totally agree. And I think the other side I noticed too, just for me specifically, is like I have found myself to be way more patient now than I was early on. Because early on, it was like, in that first phase, eyes wide open, it's like everything's hot, rapid
Yep.
fire, back and forth. And then you connect with someone who wasn't as quick to the trigger to respond or whatever. It's like, man, fuck this, I'm out. Disconnect, unmatch, whatever, delete, move on. And now is that, like you were saying, if it's 30 or 20 or 10 or 5 or whatever the big number that you have in your experience starts to dwindle down lower, like you're more committed to riding out some of those sustained conversations of like maybe there
Yeah.
is a 3 or 4 day window where we don't talk, but that's just because life, and I'm okay with that. And, if it is something, we'll see what happens and we'll play it out, versus early on in those cycles, unmatched, delete, move on, swipe to
Yeah.
find the next one.
Yeah. And I think as people go through this, like they're discovering their own boundaries. They're like, I'm okay with this, or I'm not okay with that. And I think like I it's so crazy because you and I had this conversation 10 minutes before we started recording. Like it's like the perspective people's have, and I say this maybe more often than I should, but the perspective is the remote control to their happiness. Like if they don't see it as, hey, you know what, I'm finding my boundaries and my way through this, instead of looking at, like, if they're looking at that way, awesome. But usually they're looking at like, dating sucks. I hate dating. This is stupid. Everybody's a bunch of jerks. All they want to do is have sex. All they want to do is like, I can't find a good one. And that's what you're going to find.
Well, you have a phrase that I have held on to for years. And I share it as often as I can. Things happen for us, they don't happen to us. And I think, when a relationship or a situationship or, again, a connection fizzles out or falls off that you were really into, there's that, I won't necessarily say depression, but there's that state of like internal agony of, oh, what was it about me? If it didn't work out and I wanted it to, and why? And this always happens, and I'm never going to find someone, or, we all have those internal coaches that are like the negative, and then there's the positives.
Yeah.
And you get so caught up in that, and it's like, well, hold on, what was I supposed to learn from this? Because I think therein lies the growth. That's how you reduce your debt.
Yeah.
Is you learn from those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that would take me to like my last section of this cycle, this dating cycle. I mean, I think if you're looking at a clock, if we've got 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock now would be the expectation cycle. Because I think even though I have rule number 1 of experiences over expectations, by this part of being on the apps for so long, like your expectation can be there now. What your expectation can be is, it doesn't have to be, I expect to be in a relationship and get married. It could be, my expectation is 7 orgasms. Like, it doesn't have to be like this is like, hopefully by this point you have found your boundaries, you found what you're looking for, you found like in yourself, like here, like I've done my weeding out of the of everything. And this is where like I am expecting to start or continue, hopefully maybe at this point is continue with something to get this. Like, I think that's a fair part to put expectations. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy at all. And I think, if you're following this cycle that way, I think you arrive at expectations that actually make sense, versus if you start off with an expectation
Yep.
versus an experience plan, right?
Exactly.
Like you said, you're already behind the 8 ball here. You're going in expecting something on this first date, and homeboy or homegirl's just not it, and you're disappointed and defeated, like, oh damn. Versus you meet that person, you're like, yep, that's a one and done.
Yeah. Yep.
And you just know they're not even going to get through to the expectations phase. Or, maybe you go on a second or a third or a fourth date, you're intimate for the first time, or you hook up, or whatever you want to, however you want to make it. And then you realize, okay, that was awkward, or that wasn't the level that I was comfortable with. So, look, a lot of relationships in our lives will have an end point, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it a bad relationship. That's just how it works sometimes. And I think the same approach should be used more in this world specifically, because in the 2 or 3 times that I've been in and out now, like, I have learned that you might really like someone and they might really fit and check a lot of those boxes, but something will happen where you'll have to ask that question. Okay, this happened in this environment. How do I feel about it? And I literally went through that not too long ago, and it wasn't even really app driven so much as I reconnected with someone that I had connected with, a year and a half ago. And we had a weird falling out ending of that relationship timeline, if you will. And we kind of picked up where we left off in a weird way, only to have something similar kind of happen again. And it's like, okay, lesson learned there, right? Like, you're willing to put up with what you're willing to put up with. And that's not the right way to say it, but that's how I'm going to say it, because
That's a good way
really
to say it, though.
what it is.
Like it. Yeah, I really like that. That's a great way to say it.
You adapt and change, or you decide, no thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, like, to go back to your cycle, if you can get through those other things before you're setting expectations for someone, in my opinion, you've got a much more high probability of meeting that expectation.
Yes. You figured out a lot about yourself. You figured out a lot about like I just want to say you figured out a lot about dating. Like I even hate saying the apps anymore. Like I've kind of figured out we've got the apps, we've got in the wild, we got and the one, like I don't know where this came from, but somebody was telling me that somebody hit him up in Facebook Messenger. I'm like, well, we'll just call that the jungle. So that's the jungle. You got
I
the
like
wild.
that.
Yeah, I mean, because that sounds like, Facebook is full of jungle anyway. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
madness and like there's piranha, there's all kinds of stuff out there.
I scored
Um,
an eight seat poker table for $25 on Facebook recently.
oh yeah, marketplace is good. All
Yeah,
right.
it needs some work. It needs some work, but
I
nobody's
like that.
blowing me up in my DMs either. So,
All right. I like that. That's solid. All right.
yeah,
That's a good one. But like, so like now you've gone through dating, you've gone through figuring out your boundaries, you've gone through, so I think expectations is fair. So either two things are going to happen, I think, and this is I guess my educated, because of all the dating talks I've done now, I guess, educated hypothesis on what I think it kind of looks like. You either graduate from the dating cycle and hopefully you're in a relationship, or now that you have expectations, you've started something with somebody and you crash and the hurt happens. And then you go back to the beginning where your eyes are wide open once you recover, because you're going to be hurt, you're going to be bummed, you're going to be depressed. And then it starts back at phase one, because you're going to be like, oh, people like me, people appreciate me, like I love this. And it's almost like, all right, I started over. Now, you don't need to get all the way to the expectations phase to get back. You can get to phase two and have your crash and burn and go back to phase one. It's not like you go all the way through the cycle back to one, but that just seems like that's the whole roundabout way. And hopefully you graduate to your happily ever after. Hopefully you don't crash and burn and go back to phase one. But if you do, that is where it's almost like that's when you have to stop everything for a while. You have to just totally take your kids to the water park, get in tune with yourself, have a good time, and take a month off, because you know what? It's not going anywhere. They'll be there. Like it'll be waiting for you when you're ready to go back.
I was totally going to say, and I would guarantee everyone that's listening to this is active on the apps, or has been active on the apps, or will be active on the apps, has either heard or seen firsthand that same profile that shows up again and again and
Yep.
again. And every time you see it, it says new, as if it's just been created. And again, it's like, damn, I saw this a week ago. Damn, I saw this a
Yeah.
month ago. Damn, I saw
Yeah.
this 6 months ago. And it's like this chick is in and out. Like she's deleting it every week.
Yeah.
And you could see how the profiles change, and like
Yeah.
what they're saying in their bio changes, and the tone changes, and the effort changes, and
Mhm.
like the I don't know if attitude in a profile, you're not talking, but the attitude tone, quote unquote, changes. And it's either they're bitter and jaded, or somebody burned them early, or what they keep saying, like they want this, they want this, they want this. And it's like,
Yep.
you're missing something. If you're in that perpetuated cycle of consistency that much, you're missing something.
Yep.
And to your point, unplug from the wall, set the phone down, load up the truck, go to the water park, like get away.
Yeah.
Because I got news for you. Every day there's going to be a new beautiful human that's in your area zone search. Every day there's going to be more
Yep.
and more. Every day somebody's getting divorced. Every day somebody's breaking up.
Right.
Every day
Right.
somebody's cheating
Right.
on somebody else.
Right.
Every single fucking day. It's
Bro, your
nonstop.
future wife may just not be divorced yet. You don't
Dude,
know.
my future ex-wife may not be divorced yet.
Yeah. That's even better. That's very true.
It's
That's very
so
true.
unpredictable. And kind of just to put a bow on that thought, like they're not all the same type of person. So if you're one of those individuals that just keeps getting the same type of person, stop. Like you're in control,
Well,
do something different.
So I want to hit on something that you mentioned that people may not even realize. Like I think it gets lost, and I don't even know if you meant to hit on it this way, but it really is something like, if you change anything on your profile, if you change your about me, like you just type in 5 new sentences, 3 new sentences, if you update or change a picture, all of a sudden you are now new. Like that's all you have to do is to change those little things. Like 6 words, you can change 6 words, and all of a sudden that profile is new, and you're back in like the heavy flow rotation.
Top of the
So
list.
yeah, so the algorithm changes because you changed something in your profile. And I don't think a lot of people know this. Like they'll be like, I see new. I don't like, I must go get to this one because she's new. She doesn't know what's going on, and or he doesn't know what's going on, and let me go take advantage of him. No, they could just change like a semicolon to a colon, and then it says the whole algorithm's changed to new.
Yeah. It's
So
nuts. It's absolutely
huge.
nutty.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my educated dating cycle. I believe that all to be true. I believe that's something that is definitely, and I think if you work, like it's so hard because you go through so many, like usually when you're on the apps, most people are coming out of a relationship and a breakup, and they're at all self-esteem is an all-time low. And you're trying to find your worth. They're just like I said, after the expectations phase, when that, something blew those expectations up, self-esteem can be at an all-time low, and that's why the cycle can start itself back over. So like there's nothing wrong with it. It's all figuring out who you are. And by the time you get to step 3 or step 2, you may have changed what you want because of, you're figuring out like how many times, like I can think of, you've told me about this once, and I'm going to try to say it as politely as possible. But you went out with somebody who was recently out of a relationship, fairly recently anyway, and kind of had a closed thought process on sexual experiences, and then kind of opened her mind up more with you, and just totally enjoyed all of the new stuff, right? Is that the sound about
100%.
accurate? Okay.
100%.
And that was her form of self-discovery with that. Like it's all of a sudden, like it's okay to let go of the inhibitions because it's like you don't know until you know, like to kind of what you were saying earlier, like you don't know until you know. And some of the stuff that you may have tried, or anyone else who's listening, something that you may try with somebody else that sounds a little obscure, it may suck. But you don't know until you know. But then again, you may love it. You just may think it's the best thing ever. So self-discovery. Yeah, and then
100%.
And then like you're like, hey, I really like this thing. And then when you're at the expectations things, that's implemented into the expectation of like, I know I love this. Let's roll. So
it's funny that you said that. This is slightly off topic, but as you know, I coach a lot of sports.
You do.
And in baseball, I always tell my athletes that, you've got to make the pitcher throw a strike.
Right.
And then the other side of it is like, if the ump calls a strike, well, now we know what the strike zone is. Now we know. So if you see the ball come there again, now you know that's a strike. So it's 100% what you're saying. Like you can't just think every ball is a strike, and you can't just think every strike is a ball, and either swing or not swing. Got to be selective. And then like to your thing with inhibitions, or just being comfortable getting uncomfortable. Right.
It's so huge. We talk about that
I'll steal a favorite quote that you and I love and talk about often. Like don't be judgmental, be curious.
Ted Lasso.
Right.
Well, Walt Whitman, I guess, but Ted Lasso, right?
But we reference that often, and it's very, very true. Like if somebody suggests something to you that sounds off-putting or cliche or faux pas, like you don't have to like be snooty and put your nose up.
Right.
Especially if you've never experienced it or tried. Like think about when someone recommends something that sounds really gross, taste food-wise. Right. Like, oh, I would never eat that. And then you take a bite and like, motherfucker, that was delicious. Right. Oh my goodness. Like I can't get enough of it. Like,
yeah.
You don't know till you know.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. we're not signing up for pegging. So there's that, there's a couple of
No,
things.
yeah. Listen, hey, that's not on my menu. We talked about this.
I get there's a line in the sand, but if you're a little bit like, hey, that might be, like if there's a hey, that might be, then try it. But there's like a oh hell no, then yeah, okay, then that's more than
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So I was talking to somebody who'd been on the show a couple of times, and she was actually the first actual person I talked to, because episode 1 was me telling somebody else's story. Episode 2 was her story, and we reference this guy as Chick-fil-A guy when she talks to me, and she sent me a message the other day that Chick-fil-A guy friend requested her on Facebook. So if
I don't
you
want to
guys,
call him that because I like Chick-fil-A.
I know, right? So anybody who hasn't listened to episode 2, the drive-by, you got to take a listen to it, because this is the guy that we're referencing. This is the story that we're referencing. She's all, can you believe that he friend requested me on Facebook? And you know what? I was like, yeah, I can. I can believe it. Because it's keyboard courage. It's 100% keyboard courage.
Well, and knowing how that story ends, God only knows what that dude was thinking with that friend request.
Yeah, right. I mean, like it's totally insane. So she runs into that. She runs into another person who she had a friend with benefits, I guess, who reached out to her about the same time frame to try and I don't know, just stir up a conversation,
Reconnect.
Reconnect. And then there's a guy that she had gone out with a couple of times that got caught shoplifting at Kohl's. He got caught, like, all right, you're a grown ass man, I'm sorry you can't afford Kohl's, but why are you gonna go steal from Kohl's? All 3 of these people did this about the same time frame. Like, they all reached out to her. And she's like, what is it? I said, the only, like, I'm going to start calling that, like, I know we call that zombie. Like, when someone goes to you and come back, that's zombie. And this is a little bit different. But to me, that seems like more like it's like the island of misfit toys come back to visit. And I'm just going to call that seasonal depression. Because, like,
there you go.
It's like they all show up at once. And, like, it's not like she's getting the good dates. And I'm sure this happens again to most people. And you can get this in the dating cycle, where it's just like the ones you're like, what? Like, I didn't even like you that much, male or female. Why are you reaching back out to me? Like, it's insane.
Right, like, what signal did you see that suggested, oh yeah, that was a good time? Like, let's do that. Because we've all had those bad experiences,
Yeah. Look, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like, you and I have talked about what our weeks have been like, and our week's been pretty interesting. I don't know the rules on Mercury and retrograde. I don't know that rule. I know there's isn't a Friday the 13th rolling. I don't know, but there's something crazy in the air. And then that's about the same thing that she got with the update, like
it's nuts.
That's
Absolutely
crazy,
nuts.
right? So there's their own little cycle too. So I don't know, man. So that's my take on the dating cycle. I think it's pretty, I don't know, just from all the research I've done, being the conversations with people, it just seems like it fits. But I think the most important thing that anybody can do is just be good to yourself, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, and awareness is a wonderful tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
So be aware of these patterns, be aware of how this whole process works, because, for the majority of people who find themselves going back after an experience, that's a good word for it. You have an experience with someone, you go back. You have an experience with someone, you go back. Like, it is cyclical, and that's a real thing. And it's just really part of this process. So
it really is. Now, I would be remiss, like, I feel like we're wrapping up, but I'd be remiss, since you're back on the apps. Any dating stories? And it's okay if there's
none
not.
yet. Couple conversations that have started, but again, I'm learning that I'm way more patient in this cycle. So
yeah. You are going through it as well.
We'll see. To be continued.
All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and having this conversation with me.
Absolutely, bro. Anytime. You know that. I love you.
I love you too, bro. Thank you for being along for the ride on the Swipe Wrong podcast. The show is produced by Jay Pelham. You want to reach out to us? We want to hear your story. 317-426-6616. Make sure to text, leave a voicemail. We'll get back to you. Shoot us an email at swipewrongpod@gmail.com. We are on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, YouTube. We are definitely out there. I am the host of the show. My name is Koss. And please make sure to take a listen to us next week because the saga, it continues.